Hey, 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 what up, people? Good to see ya. Got a little time on your hands? Why not listen to another chapter of The Watsons Go to Birmingham? Last time we read, it was chapter 5. Remember that? And Byron was lighting pieces of toilet paper on fire in the bathroom and dropping them in the toilet, pretending they were paratroopers on fire, Nazi paratroopers. And his mother caught him. And she had said, I guess he had done something like this before, because she said, I told you next time I was going to teach you a lesson about fire. I'm going to burn your finger and show you what it's like. And boy, she almost did it. Luckily, Joetta kept blowing it out, and so she finally gave up. I wonder if she really would have done it. I don't know. Who knows? But I mean, she was mad. There's no doubt about it. This one's chapter 6. It's called Swedish Creams and Welfare Cheese. Chapter 6, here we go. Mama stuck her head into the living room and said, Byron, I want you and Kenny to go up to Mitchell's and get some milk and a loaf of bread and a can of tomato paste for dinner. She waved a little piece of paper at us that had the grocery list written on it. How come Kenny can't go by himself? Byron, I want a half a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a small can of tomato paste, please. If you asked Mama why you had to do something and she didn't feel like explaining it, she just repeated herself. She was chopping up onions for spaghetti sauce, and I guess the tears made it so she didn't feel like talking. If you were stupid enough to ask your question again, there would be the loudest quiet in the world coming from Mama. If you went totally crazy and asked the question a third time, you might as well tie yourself to a tree and say, ready, aim, fire. Byron got the message and jerked up off the couch and walked over to the TV and punched the off knob. I knew this wasn't going to be a fun walk up to Mitchell's. We went into the kitchen. Give me the money. Just sign for it. Just what? Just tell Mr. Mitchell you want to sign for it. Mama kept whacking the onions. What? Just go in there and tell Mr. Mitchell I want to sign for some food? Your daddy and I made all the arrangements last weekend, Byron. Mr. Mitchell will let us sign for groceries until payday. Lots of people do it. A half a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a small can of tomato paste. Mama started chopping the onions a little harder. So I ain't got to give him no cash? Whack, whack, whack. All of a sudden, Byron's face jumped like a bell went off in his head. Wait a minute. I know what this means. This means we on welfare, ain't it? I held my breath. If I found out we were on welfare, I was really going to have to get ready to be teased. No, we are not on welfare. I can't believe it. You're going to start serving welfare food in this house? You really going to make me embarrass myself by signing a welfare list for some groceries like a blind peon? I guess Bi hadn't been counting how many times Mama had repeated herself. She smacked the knife on the kitchen counter and jumped right up in Bi's face. Listen here, Mr. High and Mighty. Since you just got to know, food is food. You eaten welfare food in this house before, and if need be, you'll eat it again. Now don't come playing that nonsense with me. I already told you this is not welfare food. Now you got about 5 seconds to have that door hit you in the back. Kenny, move. Bi pouted and walked real fast up to Mitchell, so I kind of had to run along beside to keep up with him. He didn't say anything while we got the stuff Mama wanted. He just snatched the things off the shelves, and then he dropped a bomb on me. You go get in line and hold our spot. I'm going to look at some comics for a minute. When we get up to the register, I'll come and tell him how we're going to pay. Oh man, I knew what that meant. Bi figured out a way not to get embarrassed. He was going to hide till after I signed for the groceries, and I was going to be the one who got embarrassed. I couldn't argue or anything, so now it was me who was pouting. Byron disappeared around the comic book rack. Hi, Kenny. Hi, Mr. Mitchell. This all you want? Mm-hmm. He took the groceries and rang them up on the cash register. That's $1.23. I saw Bi's head come peeking around the comics. This has got to go on the welfare list, I said kind of quiet. Mr. Mitchell twisted up his face. On the what? I said real low so only Mr. Mitchell could hear. We just found out we got put on welfare and we got to sign this food up on the welfare list. Byron's head disappeared again. Mr. Mitchell laughed. Kenny, this isn't a welfare list. It just means your daddy's going to pay all at once instead of a few times every week. Really? Mr. Mitchell reached under the counter and opened up a little brown box. He pulled out a bunch of yellow cards, and I could see Watson was written on the top of one of them. He wrote down $1.23 on the first line and said, now sign here. And then he pointed to the spot next to the $1.23. I wrote Kenneth Watson and gave him back the pen. That's it. That's it. He put the groceries in a brown paper bag and handed them to me. See you, Mr. Mitchell. The second I walked out of the store, Byron was next to me, and he was in a lot better mood. Man, I can't believe it. We just had a chance to get a bag full of free food, and all we took was some stupid milk, a loaf of bread, and a can of tomato sauce? Byron's good mood started getting to me, too. He was smiling and even put his arm around my shoulder as we walked. I couldn't help myself. It felt so grown up to have By walking with me like that. I started laughing right along with me. His mood was so much better that he even took the bag of groceries from me. Most of the time, when Mama made us go to Mitchell's, Byron would make me carry the bag from the store right up to the front porch, and then he'd take it from me so Mama'd think he carried it the whole way. But now he was carrying them 4 blocks away from home. This is all just too much. All you got to do is sign that stupid card, and that old fool Mitchell will give you what you want? Too much. Now that By was happy, I had 2 questions I wanted to ask him. First, he had said a word that I had never heard before, and since it was in front of Mama, I knew it wasn't cussing. As we walked home, with his arm around my shoulder, I thought I'd get a real answer from him. Byron, what's a peon? A peon? Didn't you see the Magnificent Seven? Peons was them folks that were so poor that the rich folks would just as soon spit on them as anything else. I knew this had to be a lie. You could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you listened to half the stuff Byron said. But I asked my next question anyway. What do you think the welfare food was that Mama said she gave us? I wish I hadn't asked, because this brought back his bad mood. He took his arm from around my shoulder and said, I know what it was. He handed me back the groceries too. Don't you remember how some of the time Dad sneaks up in the morning and he goes in the kitchen, and when he comes out there's a big jug of milk? Ain't you ever wondered where that milk comes from? You ever even seen any udders on Dad? That milk comes from one of them big brown boxes they keep up on them high shelves. Pure D welfare food. And don't you remember that cheese? Who ever heard of cheese coming in a box as big as a loaf of bread? You ever try to pick up one of them things? Real cheese comes in hunks or slices, not no blang loaf that weighs 40 pounds. I always thought there was something strange about that mess, and now I know. She's been sneaking us welfare food. Pure D welfare food. The cheese tasted okay to me, except for a big powdery lump every once in a while. Dad's milk was all right too. But to try to get Byron back in his good mood, I acted real disgusted. I said, "Oh man." A week later, I was walking in the alley behind Mitchell's when a big cookie with pink frosting just about hit me in the head. It went by like a flying saucer, and then it crashed in the dirt. I looked all around. I didn't see anybody, so I put my hands over my face and I stood still, because I knew if something weird like this happened once, it usually happened again. Sure enough, another cookie hit me right in the back. A big laugh came out of a green apple tree. Byron. He dropped out of the tree like a superhero. He had a great big bag of cookies in one hand and a green apple with a giant bite out of it in the other. Want some? He tipped the bag of Swedish cream cookies at me. I knew this was a trick. The bag must have been empty, but I looked inside anyway. There's still half a bag of cookies. Thanks. I grabbed 2 of the cookies and I looked at them real good just in case. By had put bugs or something on them, but they were clean. But I kept on waiting for the trick. Why would Byron waste 4 good cookies on me? Man, Swedish creams have got to be the best cookies in the world. I gulped them down and wiped my hands on my pants. I couldn't believe it. By tipped the bag at me again. He jumped up and snatched a green apple off a tree, checked it for wormholes, and then handed it to me. You best eat some of this. Them Swedish creams is good at first, but they get kind of thick in your throat after a while. Byron was being too nice, so I knew something bad was about to happen. And then I noticed a crumpled up Swedish cream bag on the ground next to the tree, and I could figure out why he was being so generous. He had already eaten a bag and a half. A bell went off in my head. I knew now why he'd been so excited and happy when he found out about getting free food at Mitchell's. By was signing up for that stuff that Mom and Dad didn't even know about. It was like he had read my mind, because I was just about to say, "Oh, bye," when he stopped being friendly and crossed his eyes at me and said, "Don't even think about it, Poindexter. You just ate 2 of them yourself, so quit wasting my cookies and just shut up and enjoy what's left." He tipped the bag at me again. By has been going down to that store and getting what he wants and just signing for it, and his parents are going to have to pay for it later. And so what does he buy? 2 bags of cookies. He had me. I couldn't tell on him, or else I'd be in just as much trouble as he would. I took another one. By went over to the green apple tree and slid his back against it until he was sitting down. I did the same thing right next to him, and we sat together munching. I wasn't used to being this friendly with Byron, so I guess I was kind of nervous, and I didn't really know what we should talk about. By just sat there chomping down on apples, so I tried to think of what him and Buphead had talked about when they sat around like this. Finally I said, "So, By, how about you and me doing a little cussing?" He twisted his face up and he said, "I thought I told you to shut up and just enjoy the cookies. Now do it." I got a huge smile. This was a perfect day. But like always, By ruined it. "Look," he pointed up at a telephone wire where a big bird sat. The bird was about the size of a pigeon, grayish brown, with a long pointy tail hanging underneath it. By jumped up and said, "That's a mourning dove. They're the coolest birds in the world. Don't nothing shake 'em up." By threw a Swedish cream at it. The cookie zipped right by the bird's head, and all the bird did was raise its wings once and look behind it. He threw 3 more cookies at the bird, and still it didn't move. When Byron's 4th Swedish cream left his hand, I knew that if the bird didn't move, he was going to get whacked. The cookie popped the bird smack jab in the chest. The bird's wings both stuck out to the side, and for a hot second, with its tail hanging down and its wings sticking out, it looked like a perfect small letter T stuck up there on the telephone wire. Then in slow motion, the bird leaned back and crashed into the dirt in the alley behind Mitchell's. I'd been throwing rocks and things at birds since I was born. I'd never even come close to hitting one. I'd seen 1,000,000 people throw 1,000,000 things at birds, and no one had ever really hit one, not even a pigeon. But now By had knocked a bird right out of the sky with a Swedish cream cookie. When I got to Byron, he picked up the bird and was holding it in his hand. The bird's head dropped backward, and it was rolling from side to side, dead as a donut. "You got him! You got a bird!" Byron held the bird in one hand, and with his other one, he gently brushed pink frosting off the dove's chest. "You got him! I never seen a bird get..." I looked right at By, and his face was all twisted up, and his eyes were kind of shut. He dropped the bird, walked over to the green apple tree, and started throwing up. I stood there with my mouth open. I couldn't believe Byron was starting to cry, and I couldn't believe how much vomit a bag and a half of Swedish creams and some green apples could make. When it looked like he was done, I walked over and put my hand on his back. As soon as I touched him, he popped me in the arm hard. "By, what?" He picked up a rotten apple and he threw it at me. "Get out of here. What are you staring at? Them apples got me sick, you little cross-eyed punk. Now get out of here." Rotten apples started coming at me real hard and fast, so I left. It was hard to understand what was going on with Byron. Some of the time, if a genie came and gave you 3 wishes, you wouldn't mind using all 3 of them to wish some real bad stuff on him. Not stupid things like that woman in the fairy tale when she wished her husband had a sausage on his nose either. I mean stuff that'd make Byron hurt so much that he'd have to think every day about how mean he is. If I had just a sausage growing off his nose, people might laugh at him behind his back, but no one would have the nerve to tease him to his face and call him Weenie Nose or something. He wouldn't know how it feels to have someone jumping on you, how sad that can make you feel. Sometimes I hated him that much, and I thought he was the meanest person in the world. After my arm quit hurting from his punch, I went back to the alley behind Mitchell's to take another look at that dead bird, but it was gone. Right in the spot where the bird had crashed, By had dug a little grave, and on top of that grave there were 2 popsicle sticks tied together in a cross. Leave it to Daddy Cool to kill a bird and then give it a funeral. Leave it to Daddy Cool to torture human kids at school all day long and never have his conscience bother him, but to feel sorry for a stupid little grayish-brown bird. I don't know. I really wished I was smart as some people thought I was, because some of the time it was real hard to understand what was going on with Byron. That was an interesting chapter. Byron is a mean kid, isn't he? And he threw that cookie at that bird and he killed that bird, which is a mean thing to do. I wonder if he really thought he was going to hit it. And then he was throwing up and maybe crying. Did not want Kenny to see him do that. He tries to be daddy cool, you know, Mr. Tough Guy. I think he felt really bad about that bird, don't you think? He gave it a funeral, made a little cross out of popsicle sticks. Yeah, Byron's a mean kid, but there's more to him than just that. And I think Kenny sees that. Good chapter. I'll catch you later. Adios, my friends.